You planted them because they looked perfect at the nursery. Maybe someone you trusted recommended them, or the shape just caught your eye. But right now, somewhere in your garden, there are shrubs quietly working against everything you've built, spreading where they shouldn't, starving your soil, crowding out plants you actually love. And the worst part? Most gardeners don't figure it out until years of work are already gone. Today, we're pulling 7 of those shrubs out of the shadows, and I'm handing you something far better to put in their place. Before we go any further, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Every week we go deep on the garden knowledge most people never find, and you do not want to miss what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me which shrub you already have in your garden, and let's get into it. Number 1 is Japanese Barberry, and before you scroll past because you don't have one, check again. This shrub is in millions of gardens across the country, sold right now in nurseries with a little tag calling it low maintenance and deer resistant. Both things are true. What that tag doesn't tell you is the rest of the story. Japanese Barberry changes the soil underneath it. It raises the soil's pH, locks out competing plants, and creates a dense, humid microclimate at ground level. And that microclimate is a breeding ground for black-legged ticks, the exact ticks that carry Lyme disease. This isn't a rumor. Research out of Connecticut tracked tick populations across hundreds of sites and found the areas with dense barberry had significantly higher numbers of infected ticks than open land. You planted a shrub, you got a hotel, and it spreads. Birds eat the berries, drop the seeds, and within a few seasons, you've got barberry pushing into your lawn edges, your flower beds, your neighbour's yard. It's already banned in several states for exactly this reason. Now here's what you grow instead. Dwarf fothergilla. Same compact size, same no-fuss care, and in autumn it puts on a colour show that makes people stop their cars. Honey-scented spring flowers, fiery fall foliage, and not a single tick invited to the party. It's native, it supports pollinators, and it actually improves the space around it instead of quietly dismantling it. That's the difference. One shrub works for your garden, the other works against it. Number 2 is burning bush, and this one is going to sting a little, because it's beautiful. Every autumn it turns this electric blazing red that looks like something out of a painting, and that's exactly why it's been one of the best-selling shrubs in North America for decades. Nurseries love it, homeowners love it, and the landscape industry has made an enormous amount of money from it. Here's what that gorgeous red color is actually telling you. Burning bush is in full reproductive mode. Those leaves turn red because the plant is pushing everything it has into its berries, hundreds of them. And when those berries drop and the birds carry them, burning bush moves into forests, riverbanks, and wild areas and takes over. It outcompetes native plants that local wildlife depends on for survival. It doesn't just grow in your garden, it escapes it. It's already restricted or banned in multiple states, and that list is growing every year. The nursery that sold it to you may not even be allowed to stock it much longer. And the irony, you planted it for that red color. You can still have that. You can have better. Grow Itea virginica instead. Common name, Virginia sweetspire. It gives you the same stunning autumn red, sometimes even deeper, with a wine purple shift that burning bush cannot touch. In late spring, it covers itself in long, fragrant white flower clusters that attract butterflies and native bees. It tolerates wet soil, dry soil, shade, and full sun without complaining. It stays where you put it. It feeds the ecosystem around it instead of strangling it. That's what a shrub should do. Earn its place without costing the garden around it everything. Number 3 is English Laurel, and this one is everywhere, used as hedging, privacy screening, boundary planting. Drive through almost any suburban neighbourhood and you'll see it. Tall, glossy, evergreen, fast-growing. On paper, it sounds like exactly what a gardener wants. In reality, it is one of the most aggressive, space-devouring shrubs you can put in a small garden. English Laurel does not know when to stop. It grows up to 3 feet a year. It sends roots out wide and deep, pulling moisture and nutrients away from everything planted near it. The canopy gets so dense it blocks light to the ground below, and nothing grows under it. Not ground cover, not bulbs, not the perennials you carefully planted along the border. They just disappear. And maintaining it is a commitment most people don't see coming. You are cutting this shrub back hard, multiple times a year, for the rest of the time it lives in your garden. Miss a season and it has already reclaimed everything you cut away. There is also something most gardeners don't know. The leaves, seeds, and stems of English laurel contain compounds that break down into cyanide when crushed. Toxic to dogs, cats, horses, and children who handle the cut material. That's what you're trimming twice a year with no gloves on. Grow Viburnum tinus instead. It gives you that same dense evergreen privacy screen with a fraction of the maintenance. From late winter into spring, it produces clusters of soft pink buds that open into white flowers, followed by metallic blue berries that birds go after immediately. It stays a manageable size, behaves itself along boundaries, and gives your garden life instead of just filling space. One shrub fills your garden. The other fills it with purpose. Number 4 is butterfly bush, and this one is going to be the hardest one on this list to hear, because people love it with their whole chest. Gardeners in the United Kingdom swear by it. You'll find it in courtyards in southern France, in backyard gardens across Australia, in front yards from California to Cape Town. That long cone of purple or pink flowers in the middle of summer, covered in butterflies. It is genuinely one of the most beautiful sights in any garden. And the name itself tells you everything you think you need to know. Butterfly bush. Surely it belongs. But here is what nobody tells you at the point of sale. Butterflies land on it. They drink from it. And then they move on because butterfly bush gives them nectar and nothing else. It doesn't host their larvae. It doesn't support their life cycle. It's the equivalent of offering someone a glass of water when they're starving. The butterflies look happy. They are not thriving. Meanwhile, that single bush produces up to 40,000 seeds in one season. 40,000. The wind takes them. The rain moves them, and within a few years it has pushed itself into meadows, river margins, and wild spaces, displacing the native plants that actually complete the butterfly's life cycle from egg to adult. New Zealand has already banned it. Parts of the United States have restricted it. Europe is having the same conversation right now. A gardener in the Netherlands once told me she ripped hers out after 10 years and felt guilty for a week. Then she planted Caryopteris, blue mist shrub, and by the following summer she had more butterflies than she had ever seen on the Baudelaire. Because Caryopteris works with the local ecosystem instead of decorating it. That's the replacement. Caryopteris clandinensis. Late summer into autumn, it produces wave after wave of soft blue-violet flower clusters that bees, butterflies, and hoverflies cannot leave alone. It stays compact, handles dry conditions beautifully, and it doesn't seed itself into places it has no business being. Your garden gets butterflies. The butterflies get an actual home. You've just seen 4 shrubs that millions of gardeners are growing right now, and every single one is doing quiet damage. We're not done. The next 3 are worse. One of them is probably sitting outside your window as you watch this. Stay with me. Number 5 is Leyland Cypress, and if you live in the United Kingdom, this name just did something to your stomach, because the British have a complicated, painful, decades-long relationship with this tree shrub that has ended neighbourhoods, destroyed friendships, and actually triggered changes in property law. There is an entire section of the Anti-Social Behaviour Act in the UK that exists specifically because of Leyland Cypress disputes between neighbours. That is not a plant. That is a legal problem with roots. And it spreads everywhere. North America, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. Gardeners all over the world bought into the same promise. Fast privacy, low cost, easy establishment. What they got was a plant that grows 4 feet every single year with no natural stopping point, no built-in ceiling. Left alone, it hits 40, 50, 60 feet. It blocks sunlight from neighbouring properties for hours a day. It kills the grass beneath it, dries out the soil around it, and drops a thick layer of dead brown needles that nothing will grow through. When it finally dies, and Leyland Cypress dies suddenly, dramatically, and with no warning, you are left with a massive dead structure that costs a serious amount of money to remove. A gardener in Ontario told me her neighbour's Leyland row had grown so tall it blocked the afternoon sun from her entire vegetable garden for 6 years. 6 years of reduced harvests because of someone else's privacy hedge. Grow Thuja green giant instead. Same fast establishment, same dense evergreen screen, but it tops out at a predictable height, holds its shape without aggressive pruning, and it doesn't turn on you after a decade. In colder climates, arborvitae performs the same role beautifully. Controllable, neighbourly, honest about what it is from day one, Privacy is worth having. A hedge war with your neighbour is not. Number 6 is privet. Common privet, Japanese privet, Chinese privet. Different names, same problem, every continent. Walk through a neglected garden in Louisiana and it's there. Drive through the countryside in New Zealand and it's lining the roads. Push through overgrown land in South Africa, Japan, parts of Europe. Privet has beaten you there. It is one of the most widely naturalized invasive shrubs on the planet, and it started in someone's garden. Possibly a garden exactly like yours. The story is always the same. Someone planted it for a neat, fast-growing hedge. It did the job. Then the birds ate the berries, and privet has thousands of berries. And the seeds went everywhere those birds went. Into forests, into wetlands, into protected natural reserves where it forms dense thickets that crowd out native vegetation and collapse the food web that local wildlife depends on. Australia lists several privet species as significant environmental weeds. The southern United States considers it one of the most damaging invasive plants in the region. And yet it is still sitting quietly in suburban gardens worldwide, looking perfectly innocent. Here's the part that hits hardest. Privet is also a health issue. The pollen is a well-documented trigger for asthma and allergic rhinitis. Researchers in Australia linked privet flowering season directly to spikes in hospital admissions for respiratory problems in urban areas. You're not just growing an invasive shrub. During flowering season, your neighbours are breathing it. Grow hawthorn instead. Native varieties like Crataegus monogyna give you the same dense hedging structure with extraordinary wildlife value. Nesting birds, pollinating insects, and berries that feed thrushes and waxwings through winter. It belongs in the landscape. It strengthens it rather than dismantling it from the inside. A hedge should protect your garden, not wage war on everything outside it. Number 7 is Wisteria, and I already know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that can't be right, because Wisteria is breathtaking. Those long cascading purple flower clusters dripping off a pergola on a warm morning in Tuscany, in Kyoto, in a walled garden in Provence. It is one of the most photographed plants on Earth. People plan entire garden designs around it. People travel to see it. And in the right setting, managed with serious discipline and experience, it can be magnificent. But in a small garden, it is a disaster dressed in purple. Wisteria is one of the strongest, most structurally aggressive climbing shrubs in existence. The stems don't just grow, they twist, they wrap, they force their way into roof tiles, under fascia boards, into gutters, between window frames, and through mortar joints in brick walls. A mature wisteria can exert enough physical pressure to crack masonry. There are homeowners across the United Kingdom, Japan, and the eastern United States who have faced thousands in structural repair bills tracing directly back to a wisteria that got away from them. And in small gardens, there is simply not enough space to manage it properly. It needs annual pruning twice a year, sometimes 3 times with real precision. Miss a season and it has already made decisions about your house that you're going to regret. Grow Acacia quinnata instead. Common name, chocolate vine. It produces clusters of small, deep burgundy flowers in spring with a scent that stops you mid-step. It climbs beautifully, stays manageable, and doesn't treat your roof like a suggestion. In warmer climates, Hardenbergia gives you the same cascading purple effect with none of the structural ambition. Your garden wall should still be standing in 20 years. With wisteria in a small space, that's genuinely not guaranteed. 7 shrubs. 7 gardens quietly paying the price for a decision that looked perfectly reasonable at the nursery. And that's the thing nobody warns you about. Bad plant choices don't announce themselves. They settle in, they grow, and by the time the damage is visible, years of work have already gone with it. But you know now, and knowing changes everything you do the next time you're standing in that nursery aisle, tag in hand, wondering if this is the one. You'll remember this. You'll put it back. And what you choose instead will still be thriving, still be beautiful, and still be earning its place in your garden 10, 15, 20 years from now. If this video saved you from even one of these mistakes, share it. Send it to the gardener in your life who still has a burning bush in the front yard, or a Leyland Cypress climbing toward their neighbour's sky. They need to see this before the spring planting season makes the decision for them. And if you want to keep building a garden that actually works with you instead of against you, subscribe, because what's coming next on this channel goes even deeper. We're talking about the perennials that look perfect in year 1 and fall apart by year 3, the soil mistakes that no amount of good planting can fix, and the small space garden designs that outperform gardens 10 times their size. This community is growing fast, and the people in it are growing smarter gardens because of it. Make sure you're part of that. The best garden you've ever had is still ahead of you. Let's build it together.